Hello, this is Mitch Montgomery, agronomist in Northwest Iowa for Golden Harvest, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about compaction. When we first think about compaction, we think about its impacts on the root system. But I want to go a little deeper than that. When you think about a healthy corn plant's root system, it will normally contact 3 to 4% of the entire soil colloid surface area. That's a healthy root system, only contacting 3 to 4% of the available surface area in the top 1 to 2 foot of soil. So thinking about that, anything that you do that impacts that is going to affect plant health. But in addition to that, we think about nutrient uptake, water uptake and water use, standability. If we have less roots, we see issues sometimes with winds knocking some corn plants over. But we also need to think about poor aeration for the soil, not just the corn plant, but other sustaining biology. If we're not moving oxygen and carbon dioxide through the soil efficiently, we'll see an impact on soil base, the native and non-native soil biology. The drainage component, if we induce those compaction layers, solid compaction layers at a certain level, you'll see, even with limited rainfall, you'll see micro zones or small zones where we'll see soil saturation right on top of that compaction zone. It's only in a small area, but it will also have a negative effect again on roots as well as soil biology. Any other compounding stresses such as drought, excessive rainfall, corn rootworm feeding or any other pest root feeding, as well as just nutrient deficiency of a specific farm will impact the plant health. What type of compaction are we dealing with? In this case, we have a few things going on, but you can see compaction likely induced at the time of planting. Yes, I understand it's always a compromise. When we're planting, we're always balancing between productivity and perfection, so it always is a compromise. But if we're planting too soon after secondary tillage or too soon after a rain event, certain soil types, we will have an impact. That's even compounded if we have too much downforce or more downforce margin than we need for the soil conditions. There's also a component of speed versus downforce. The faster we go, the more downforce we need to increase ride. That increased downforce can induce some issues. And then the planters that are still running springs. If you're coming off a dry year and you need increased downforce or increased spring pressure to hold the planter in the ground, and you put on a second spring or increase your spring tension, and then you get into a rainfall event or a wet year, you can have issues. The next issue we see is compaction induced by primary tillage. In a large part of the Midwest, we'll see issues with disc rippers that are set improperly, either not running the points deep enough to take out induced compaction layers, or potentially setting the disc gangs too close in depth to the points. We see this often in wet years, where growers will lift up the points because it's hard to pull, and then they'll increase the down pressure or downforce on the discs to make it black or to reduce residue. So those issues can induce a compaction layer at whatever depth the tillage points are running. The third concern we can see is tillage induced during secondary or spring tillage. Are the soil conditions okay for tillage? Again, it's always a compromise, but it's important to empower the operator to know when a go or no-go decision needs to be made. It also depends on the tool. Most of the current vertical tillage tools on the market do a great job, but settings are important there as well. Field cultivators, sweep overlap, sweep style also matter here. Some of the high overlap, flat style sweeps can have more issues with creating a compaction or smear later than some of the others. High-speed discs in the spring continue to be a high risk, especially if soil conditions aren't favorable and aren't dry. Strip till, fall versus spring tillage or strip tillage shows up commonly depending on the conditions of the growing season. And even in no-till, we still, as I said, see the issues with down pressure, issues with the planter, and things like that. So how does compaction affect nutrient uptake? When you think about a couple of our macronutrients, specifically phosphorus and potassium, we understand that 94% of the phosphorus and 78% of the potassium uptake through the plant via diffusion. That means that the nutrient has to cross a membrane from a high concentration to low concentration. That membrane is the plant root, or the corn plant root. So we have to have that contact with the soil surface, or that soil clay or soil colloid to make that diffusion uptake reaction occur. 78% of potassium, 94% of phosphorus are uptaken into the plant this way. So when you have something that affects root development, it has a huge impact on the uptake of phosphorus and potassium. So ultimately, compaction affects yield. How do we mitigate it? There's a common misconception that we can mitigate compaction with tillage. That's only partly true. Compaction mitigation is a long-term process. Usually, the best mitigation is a freeze and thaw followed by active root development within that root zone. You can speed that up. If you do have a pretty solid or identified layer, shallow, anywhere from that 4 to 10 inch range, you can increase water movement or reduce saturation by pulling a deep ripper, inline ripper, through that to increase water movement. Pull the plug, so to speak, especially in the heavy tiled parts of the world. We'll see that commonly work well, where we'll pull the plug on that compaction layer, allow saturating rain event to pass through that, and allow better root development to, over time, break up that compaction. The best thing we can do, obviously, is to prevent compaction from occurring in the first place by really monitoring our tillage practices as well as soil conditions when we're making those passes. Again, this is Mitch Montgomery, agronomist with Golden Harvest for Northwest Iowa. Thank you for listening. If you have any additional questions, please talk to your local Golden Harvest sales representative or GHX specialist, or visit us at goldenharvestseeds.com. Thank you.